All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the CAI Education Committee Chair sharing session. So really today is about giving a space to all of you to talk to your peers across the country who are in similar positions as you are that are chairing the education committees for the CAI chapter. We did our first one of these last year. So if you are still a committee member or the chair of the committee as last year, you might have participated last year. So thank you for returning again. We got some really great feedback that this was really beneficial to be able to share ideas, challenges, successes with peers that you might not always be able to be in contact with due to, again, the location of everyone. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. We've got a couple people on from our headquarters staff. I myself my name is Kelly Schultz. I'm in the Chicagoland area. We have Emily Jennings, who is in Florida, Alicia, who is in Dallas, and Crystal, who is in the Washington metro area. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Again, this is very casual. Just a reminder, feel free to stay on camera, off camera, mute yourself as you'd like, and to utilize the chat feature. We'd like to start today by just recognizing that the education committees for our chapters really touch a lot of the other committees within your chapter. And there's a lot of collaboration going on and communications, whether that's marketing events, getting topics, relating things to the newsletters or publications. And so we just wanted to hear from you how you're communicating and connecting with your other committees within the chapter.
Hi. So we last year started doing committee like chair get-togethers. So we meet at like a Panera or somebody's office, and we just talk about what the other committees are doing and how the education committee, because we do touch so many different committees, can do to help strengthen CAI Minnesota. And I think it was pretty successful. We had a stellar 2023.
That's great. Thank you, Caitlin.
We typically do quarterly chair vice chair meetings through our chapter. It's organized through the chapter office, and we Zoom quarterly with one another. And then we have a board liaison on each of our committees that also helps keep us tied together. And then, of course, we coordinate with, we have a new magazine committee and a membership committee along with education that we kind of try to work together to coordinate our efforts for all three committees.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Is everyone else kind of doing the same thing, or is anyone else doing? Amy, I see you came off mute first. Oh, she's walking away. Does anybody else want to share? Roxanne?
Yeah, definitely. Our call that we had last week was interesting because there was somebody from Indiana and I'm from Kentucky. And she talked about she felt like she had moved from a big organization out in California to Indiana where she felt there was the mentality of poaching. And I kind of feel like in Kentucky, it's the same way, but and we don't have committees. The only committee we have is for a business showcase. So I think that's the reason they're feeling the poaching is I hear you all talk about these wonderful committees. And I think if, I could help implement some more of these in our chapter, I think that will really be beneficial and helpful to take away that poaching feel.
Yeah, to form more of that community aspect, and we're in this together and everything. And I think one of the great things, it's a resource that our presidents and president-elects have, and then also our chapter executive directors, is there's a lot of file sharing around that. And so if a chapter is looking to start committees, there are tons of chapter charters out there that they have direct access to through our toolkit, or we have an exchange network that they can communicate in live time or real time, I should say, with the other chapters. So they can also request specific things. So if you are looking for a certain charter to start some committees, definitely let your leadership know, and they can help filter that in so that those can go into place. That's great. Thanks, Roxanne. Anyone else like to share their experience working with other committees within the chapter?
We
Go
do
ahead,
all
Erica.
of ours through Zoom or an email.
Okay. And do you think that's pretty beneficial, that it's not too overwhelming with the emails going back and forth or getting lost?
We haven't seen a problem with it. We usually will only use the emails though to schedule the Zoom meetings and then maybe an update here and there. Most of it is done in Zoom and we try to take minutes, a loose set of minutes.
Erica, go ahead.
Oh, I agree. Email, I think, with certain contacts, like chair to chair emails, and then, they can reach out to the individual groups if they need to, and kind of the chairs can communicate with their committee.
Yeah.
Those work for us.
That's great. I know one thing a couple of our chapters have been discussing lately is chapter shared calendars, so that other people who maybe aren't on a committee know when things are taking place. So if they do have a question that needs to go to the committee, or even when an event is taking place, that it's an easy one stop to go to those calendars. Does anyone have something like that already in place that you're using? Amy, go ahead.
So we do. Michelle LeBlanc, our chapter AD, I think she's on the meeting too. She's done a beautiful job of getting all of us really organized on Google. So we have a Google Drive, a shared drive that all of our resources are saved in. And the committees have access to those. We do have the quarterly chair check-ins where we talk about it. Some of us are cross members. We have a manager and HOA education committee, and then also a programs committee that handles education. And so we do have a couple of cross committee members, so we're checking in with each other often to make sure that we're not overdoing a certain topic or repeating something, and checking with speakers to make sure, we're not using the same speakers they are. But the Google Drive has really helped us kind of get a central location and easy access for everybody to have all of the information at the same time.
That's great. Are others using a Google Drive or a similar type of, cloud-based sharing to do forms or communications resources? All right. So if you are interested in doing something like that, please have your CED reach out to us, or I'm sure Michelle, I'm kind of throwing you out there, Michelle, but I'm sure she would love to assist in providing some guidance to those other CEDs on how she got that set up and everything. So thank you, Amy. And Amy, you bring up a great point that we are seeing a trend in chapters kind of separating the education and committees into either subcommittees based around membership type, or even in some cases by region. So for example, I know Illinois has a downtown education committee and then more of a suburbs committee. Are you seeing within your chapters kind of more of those focused education style events happening?
Hi, this is Steve Silberman from the CAI Illinois chapter. We also have what's called a homeowner education committee, and we have a manager education committee too. And we do communicate between the two committees, on the type of seminars and presentations that we do each year.
And do you think that's been pretty successful within the chapter to have kind of those dedicated committees?
Yes, because I think there's different types of education that managers need compared to what the homeowners need. And sometimes when you have them both in the same room, there's been issues of the type of questions that are being asked, or sometimes the homeowners don't have the same type of education the managers do. So you want to go into a little more depth on the type of education programs that we do.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Amy, I think you were about to say something too.
Well, I was just going to say that that's worked really well for us. And even sometimes, because we have an education and development committee, so we have some subcommittees set up under there, but our education and development handles both the manager education and the homeowner leadership education. And some of those programs are crossed, tailored to more so to the board members or to the managers, depending on what audience we have at that time. But we've been able to reuse some of our presentations just to make sure that the same information is coming across to everybody, legislative updates and other things like that. It seems to work really well.
To add to what Amy's saying about our chapter and the split of the committees, we merged some education committees, but now our committees are split between in-person education and virtual education. So the in-person education committee covers the luncheon programs and the expo, and the virtual education covers managers education, quarterly webinars, HOA education quarterly webinars. We do a manager virtual boot camp. And then they also have a subcommittee, or they have two subcommittees. This is our biggest committee. They have two subcommittees that handle coaching to credentials. So all of our like credential mentoring, and then also our college curriculum subcommittee.
Great. And one of the things you mentioned, Michelle, was that difference between the in-person and virtual. And I know some chapters have put into place kind of some logistics around that they felt like they don't want to get rid of the virtual programming. Yes, people want to come back to in-person, but there's still a space to provide a virtual education, especially if you're in an area that kind of has a more outreach. So a lot of our state chapters, for example, like to still have those virtual programmings. Is there anything that your committees or your chapter has done to differentiate of when you would do an in-person versus a virtual? Caitlin, I see you came off mute.
Yeah. So in Minnesota, we base it on the snow. We do all of our like wintry events virtually because nobody wants to drive in the snow. And then the rest of them are held in person. We actually put out a survey to see what people wanted. Did they want, because we used to do hybrid and that got really tricky and extra complications that we don't need. So what we decided is 3 events a year will be virtual and 3 will be in person, and it's worked really well as far as attendance.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have any kind of standards around virtual? Doug, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, I'm with the West Florida chapter. We, as far as committees, we used to have manager education and homeowner education separate. Then they merged it based on the president at the time wanting that. Then it's now been re-separated again. So we've been through very permutations of that. But one of the things that we're considering right now for across both education committees, when it comes to trying to provide additional sponsorship opportunities for the business owner members, is on the ones that are virtual. And I know you guys do this on national stuff, but putting together essentially a commercial or different, pre-recorded video commercial type things that would be before, middle, after, or whatever those events, and then providing sponsorship opportunities for that. So we're, it's a work in progress, and obviously there's technology issues there to create those type of videos, but it's something that we're considering, and the business owners, have seemed to take to that as another additional way, or build it in maybe just to sponsorship, levels or things like that. So so it hasn't happened yet, but it's been discussed. So if someone else is doing a version of that, again, I know National does that on on the education stuff you guys do. But if there's a local chapter doing it, I'd be curious to hear about that too.
Yeah, that's great, Doug. And I don't see anyone on here from Michigan. If you are on here, feel free to jump in. I apologize. They have their trade show this week, so I don't think they're on here. But they actually do a virtual, they call it a mini trade show, virtual event. And they have an hour of education and then a small time slot to go into breakout rooms on Zoom, and all of the different sponsors for this virtual event have a breakout room, and they move people through the breakout rooms during that time slot, and then they have a second hour of education. So it's kind of sandwiched in between, but it gives some of that vocal in-person presence that you would see at an in-person event on that virtual platform. They've been pretty successful with that format. So again, if you need more information about that, feel free to reach out to myself, or again, the Michigan chapter. I'll drop their email right in here into the chat in a moment. Is anyone else with your virtual programming kind of asking for kind of that commercial or the sponsor to do an introduction at the beginning? I see a couple head nods around that. If you're not doing that, is there a reason that you feel that you can't do that, or that just that you're not doing it?
Well, I'll chime in real quick. The reason why we
Yeah.
haven't been doing it, at least a live version of that, is because sometimes you have trouble controlling the length of that person's, talking, or, sometimes the rep for the company's not great at public speaking or all those other things. So we thought if we had a pre-recorded version of it, that would be a way to offer it, but yet also control the quality and the length of what's being said. So we still do sometimes offer sponsorship opportunities for virtual, but because the cost is so low, if nothing, for those events, we typically have tried to make those not involving sponsors. So
Great. Thank you.
So we do sponsorships for all of our webinars. And what Michelle usually does is collect essentially a commercial at the beginning for 30 to 60 seconds, or give them the opportunity to have a person in person speaking to the company. But to Doug's point, not everybody is comfortable with that. And the other kind of thing that we've done, which has been fun for smaller sponsorships, is we get like $25 gift cards. And then for those that are active in the webinar and they're participating in the chat, so you're keeping people engaged throughout, we raffle off gift cards at the end for those that have been active on the webinar.
That's great.
I haven't had any issues really with the live intro versus the video promo. Some of our sponsors just don't have a video promo to give. I think the live intro is better, honestly, even though you can get a lot of information across in the video. It is literally a commercial, so people tune out. But I think it's great to like see the rep's face and hear them. And then we allow them to attend the whole session so they can participate in the comments or whatever. As a side note, we do also allow other business partners to attend, like manager education and stuff, but I charge them an exorbitant fee. So we get a couple takers, but not much. It does keep them out. And they don't overstep, the ones who do attend.
Great. At this point, I want to turn the conversation over to all of you, and I want to give you the space to really throw things out to this group of your peers. So at this point, it can go any direction that you guys want it to go. That if there's been a success that you'd like to share, that maybe another chapter could make their own, or a challenge that you want to throw out to the group to see if maybe we can find some solutions. So I'll open that up to all of you right now.
Something new that we're doing this year is a speakers workshop. We see a lot of the same speakers coming through and the same business partners wanting to speak, and so we feel like our pool of speakers has been kind of small, and we're trying to open that up. So we're actually holding this month. We're holding a speakers workshop for managers and business partners, and we're doing kind of sort of like a Toastmasters kind of deal to talk about how that speaking goes. And then we're having representatives from our programs committee and our manager and HOA education to get up there and talk about what it actually looks like to put together the presentation, what the expectation of the committee is, and kind of what that timeline looks like. We topped out at 30 because we wanted to make sure that it was meaningful to those that were attending, but we're holding it for free. And we had quite a few takers, and we're really excited to get that off the ground so that we can expand our pool of speakers.
It's an in-person program, and we're holding it directly after one of our luncheons to maximize efficiency of people who are already coming out for our luncheon. And it definitely was popular. We had to cut off registration, but we still had people who wanted to register. So once we see how this goes, maybe we can end up holding more than one each year to get as many people trained up as possible.
That's great. Does anyone have any questions for Amy about potentially implementing something like that within your chapter, or do you see that there's a need to kind of train the presenter?
I think that's one thing that we really focused on end of 22 into 23 is making sure, because you can have a speaker that is so knowledgeable but not a great speaker, and then you can have somebody who's a great speaker but maybe not as knowledgeable. So I know my vice chair is on the call. She when she did hers last year, she made them do like a Zoom call and did like a pretend mock. Do your outline, do your your presenter, your everything like that. And that was a very successful event. I think that was our trade show last year. So it worked really well for us.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin.
We have sort of a rigorous run-up scheduled to the program of meetings with the speakers and run-throughs of the full program. I don't know if other people do that as well. I think like minimum, there's at least 2 run-throughs with the speakers before they actually deliver the program.
All right. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Anything else that anyone would like to share or throw out to the group that you're having a challenge with?
How do you get managers to sign up and then stay involved?
Now, when you say sign up, do you mean as a speaker or as a committee member?
As a member. Yep, as a committee member.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're about 10 or 12 people. So I don't know what everybody else's size look like. Maybe we're doing really great. I don't know.
So go
Our
ahead, Amy.
manager education committee probably has about 18, but as Michelle was talking about, we also do college curriculum, coaching to credentials. So our committee is a little bit bigger, but the way that we do that is making sure that they understand the charter. If you miss 3 meetings, you are not a part of the committee anymore. And then also at the beginning of the year, we basically make a map for the year. So we're like, these are all of our dates, these are all of our times to shine, and who's taken what. And so we kind of pass it out to everybody. The chairs are obviously there to support any of the leads that take those. But assigning the committee leads to each of the programs gives them a sense of ownership, and also some excitement for them to plan one of their own programs. So we found that works really well in kind of planning it out at the beginning of the year as to what your year looks like, and then just holding everybody accountable. We kind of leave those on our agenda for every month, so that we're touching base like, hey, Michelle, what are you doing for the June presentation? Amy, what are you doing for this one? And so we're still touching base throughout the year and making sure that we're checking in with them. But that seems to keep people engaged and just assigning positions for them and jobs for them throughout the year.
Do you guys all meet every month?
We do.
All of our committees meet virtually.
Yep, we do too, for education.
I would like to, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Erica.
I just want to hear how you guys get ideas for all the topics for your symposiums and events. Do you just pretty much talk about it amongst yourselves, or do people go out to their management companies, or is there something more formal you use?
We survey our members and ask them what they need, where they feel like the education is lacking, or where they feel like they need a deeper dive into something. And we usually get really good feedback. And then when we do the presentations on the topics that they've suggested, that's how we get really good turnout in our programs.
So your chapter, like administrative people help you get a survey out to the chapter members?
Yes.
Okay.
I would love to say we get a great response from our surveys, but we really don't. We have that question on all of our post-event education surveys, is what else would you like to hear? And we do get responses to that. They're not all great ideas, or they're things that we've done or already planning. We did put out a call for topics, and we got a couple good things from that. But I think for the most part, the ideas are in the committee.
This is Summer in North Gulf Coast, and we have the same thing. I'll put out surveys, but they just aren't answered that much. But I think, Michelle Jones, you're a large chapter, right?
We're Chesapeake chapter in Maryland, so we're not huge. DC Metro is much larger than us, so it's hit or miss whether or not we have success with our surveys. But usually you get a couple really good ideas from those, and then we can kind of spawn, come up with the rest on our own, or if something's missing, or shift the idea or the topic just slightly to capture a larger audience.
What format do you use for those surveys? Is it Survey Monkey or do you remember?
I do believe they use SurveyMonkey for that, but I'm not positive. I'd have to check with Valerie to see if that's what they use.
I'll check. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, I don't know if this is appropriate, but we're just now looking up, we finished our expo trade show last month
Hi.
and thinking
I
about,
might too.
we're thinking about board certification classes. And since that's new, we haven't done that ourselves. Usually our business partners do it. Is it okay to ask about that as an education piece?
Absolutely. So one of the actual requirements for the chapters is to provide a board leader education course every year. So the chapter has freedom to put on what they would like to, and some of these committees, you are the ones that are organizing this. Others, you might have a different committee that's doing that. The requirement, there's multiple modules that you have to meet those topics on, and then also it needs to be at least 4 hours in length. It does not have to be held with just your chapter. You can partner with other chapters to do this. And we also do provide presentation slides. All of your CEDs have access to all of this information, so that, again, we kind of have this standard template in place for facilitators that you might have. But we also offer the option that through our headquarters organization, we have an on-demand version, and it's a certificate program. So if you do want to link your personal or your chapter program to this, you definitely can. There's a small fee per attendee to be linked to that, but they get access to the on-demand. Emily, or I think Michelle, had dropped in a couple references to that. But to connect with our program, they get access to the on-demand video and all of those resources, along with, if they finish the program, they get a certificate that they went through this, so they can bring that back to their community. They can highlight it through that way. We have chapters that actually highlight it through different publications of celebrating the homeowner leaders who have gone through this program. And then also you're listed on our national database as well for that. So if you're interested in more of that, feel free to connect with any of us here at headquarters if you're the one leading that effort. If there's a different committee that's leading that effort, or just your board / your chapter staff, again, have them reach out to us. Most of it, your board, if you're not running it, your board or your chapter staff is probably the one who's leading that effort. But definitely tons of resources around that, which leads to, I know sometimes we get very ingrained in providing that manager education and the topics that the managers want. And so just don't forget about our other members. So we also have our homeowner leaders, of course, but we also have our business partners, and we also have our management companies. And so those two membership types sometimes get left out of what type of education. So we've been hearing a lot from different chapters that some are offering some of those soft skills style education that aren't just geared towards managers or geared towards a homeowner leader, but a business partner could send their sales staff or their direct client facing staff to understand some of those soft skills as well. So kind of think about that are there any topics that would be appropriate to kind of reach more than just one membership type? So we are kind of seeing that trend a little bit. One other thing I wanted to say about the topics and kind of trying to get some ideas. One thing that we found some chapters having success with is looking at what's being discussed on the exchange. So if you don't know, the exchange is our virtual connection for our members to take place. Hopefully you don't have a real-time notification. Otherwise, your email box would just get flooded with emails because it's very popular. But there is a daily, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a weekly digest. I think the weekly is probably too much to manage. Usually the daily digest, there's a lot of communications going on, but you can see some really good hot topics. What are people discussing? What are the areas of concern that are out there or getting a lot of traction? So I highly recommend that if you are serving as your education chair or on your education committee, kind of look at that exchange, even if it's not for, personal reasons, but more of, is there a hot topic out there? Or maybe there's even someone who's responding to a message and you are having a similar topic that you want to have, that you could tap into them to be an industry expert with you. Because some of those people, even though they're not maybe with your chapter, especially if you're doing a virtual program, let's say it's January in Minnesota and your virtual program's on a certain topic, it's really easy to get that virtual speaker in there. And so making sure that you're connecting in that way as well. I know a lot of our members love to be asked to speak at other chapters. So utilize that exchange to your benefit as well. Speaking of speakers, how do you diversify your speaker pool? How are you finding new speakers to speak on topics?
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead, Kaylin.
Oh, sorry. I don't know about the rest of the world, but we don't allow speakers to speak more. Like they have to wait 2 years. So if they speak this year, they have to wait until 2026 in order to be a speaker again. So that we're not like, oh yeah, we're always, this law firm always has people or what have you. Just keeps it fresh. And then, it's an incentive for our business partners too, because they have to be members of CAI to speak.
That's great.
Yeah, what I'll add to that for the Minnesota chapter and the other chair here, the vice chair, we also rotate through our service provider list and we look for our active sponsors. So we try to gear education programs and give the exposure to those that also give and contribute to CAI in general, just because it gives them the incentive to give back to the members, and then also the members recognize, oh, they sponsored this and that's who that is, and they're knowledgeable, they're experienced, and so on and so forth. So we can rotate and keep it fair.
Great, thank you, Heather. Does anyone else have those policies in place where a speaker can't just be the speaker for every single session or every single year on a certain topic?
We don't have a specific timeline. Like if somebody speaks, we don't have them wait again, but we do try to put it to whatever the topic is, to try to find the best legal that we know works well with that topic and how they engage with the community from speaking prior. So if I know that this lawyer is really knowledgeable in construction defect and that's our topic, then and he's engaging, I'll usually have that person and then accompany another person, maybe a manager or a construction company that deals with that on a regular basis that can pair together well.
Carrie, and that's a great point of kind of forming these panels, right, of the different groups. So having that business partner perspective, that attorney perspective, the manager, the homeowner. And so it can be really relatable and give you those different sides. So I know we're seeing that trend a little bit of those panel speakers throughout chapters. So if you're not doing that, I think that would be a great thing to add to one of your programs of just giving those different points and aspects. Crystal, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up about diversifying the panel with different member types. I think that's one thing that CAI can do really well, especially in markets where there's competitors, because a lot of competing organizations are focused on one member type. And so if you bring a voice to all the member types together on a panel, it may give you a little more of a well-developed program that your competitor may not be able to do.
Great, thank you.
I think we don't do a good job of that, honestly. We do have some rules in place, but Well, for panels, we do, because it's basically the rule that you always have to have at least a manager on your panel. Like, you can't just be a business partner presenting something. You have to bring in a manager perspective. And we prefer like 3 people, ideally, to 2. But like, for instance, we're doing the CID law course next week. And so we have 3 different lawyers presenting from 3 different firms. Is great. But one of those is a great speaker. So he also teaches part of our board leadership workshop development course. And because he is a great speaker, I'm pretty sure he's doing a session at the expo or at the managers boot camp as well. But we put on so many programs a year. We have 8 or 9 luncheons. We have the expo, we have the managers boot camp, we have quarterly managers virtual, HOA virtual quarterly, that I think if I said every 2 years for those speakers, we would really run out. We'd have to be doing a speakers workshop every month, I think, to get enough people to do it. So we try to limit to them to only once a year for a particular type of program. So like, if you spoke at a luncheon, you're done for the year for luncheons, but we might still have you do something at the expo, or you might do one of our other courses, but at least the same audience isn't exposed to you necessarily multiple times in the same year.
Great, thank you. Doug, I had seen that you had come off mute for a second. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, West Florida chapter, I mean, pretty much every education event is a panel with some exceptions. You know, we down here in Florida, you know, have gone through a lot of stuff with the collapse in Surfside, and of course they've, you know, all kinds of changes now to engineering reports and reserve studies and all kinds of things that have changed in Florida in the last, you know, couple of years. So, you know, we have had events where we've done, you know, an expert in that particular area maybe do a deep dive into a topic. But with those few exceptions, I think we almost always do a panel. We're typically looking to do what everyone has already said, which is, you know, align multiple different business partners, managers, whoever we can get that's anywhere close to relevant to the topic. We don't have you know, a hard set rule that I'm aware of. I think it's more of just a, you know, a look back and go, yeah, you know, they have spoke a lot or things like that. So I mean, there's certainly attention paid to it, but I don't think someone's got a whiteboard in the home office, you know, checking people's names off. Again, in Florida, we have so many chapters in Florida that it would be a challenge, you know, same thing as was mentioned by someone else, that, you know, we would run out of speakers, you know, in our chapter, because there's another chapter, you know, 30 minutes north of us and another one 45 minutes south of us. So I mean, like, you know, there's so many chapters in Florida compared to some states that, you know, I don't know how you guys do it, who have one chapter for the whole state. I don't even know how that works. Like, but at any rate, so yeah, I would say we're doing the panels for, you know, 90% of everything we do, and it works really, really well.
Thank you, Doug, for sharing. Steve, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, we do panels. We have at least 2 times a year for our homeowners. We have homeowners Q&A sessions where we'll try to pick a topic that we can get different experts in different areas on that can all talk about it. And we do those in person because we got a lot of feedback that, you know, it was easier for people to understand what they're talking about and ask the questions in person. And it's just easier because once we start these HOA Q&As, we get so many questions, and then from one question leads into another. And then it's been so great because we'll even do like an intermission for like 15 minutes. And a lot of the homeowners get together and they start talking, and then they'll exchange their addresses or phone numbers and want to talk more about some of the issues that we've talked about. And it's been a great presentation that we've been doing. And we have one tonight that I'm going to right after this.
Thank you for sharing, Steve. There's one thing that, Doug, when you mentioned talking about the other chapters that are close and potentially running out of speakers. One thing I just want to make sure that everybody knows is that your chapter executive director has access to a CAI chapter speakers bureau. So these are speakers that other chapters have used and they recommend. They can range from internal CAI members to outside paid speakers. But if you have someone who is a really great presenter, please have your chapter executive director add them to the Speakers Bureau. As you can see, we still have chapters that are doing virtual education, and we also have some chapters that are close by each other that can utilize the same members, or even potentially that member might even be interested in traveling to another chapter and being that speaker and bringing in an outside perspective. So kind of twofold. One, if you're looking for a speaker around a certain topic, please touch base with your, again, executive director to make sure that they're checking to see if there's anyone available within the Speakers Bureau. Or again, on the flip side, if someone's really good and did a great presentation, like Michelle mentioned, you've got that person who's that really great speaker. Again, this would be a great way for them to grow their network and their speaking opportunities as well. So again, just keep that in mind from both sides.
Do you guys have anybody from neighboring states that don't have a CAI chapter that join yours? For instance, here in Minnesota, Iowa doesn't have a chapter yet. HOAs are growing down there. So if they want to be members, they're members with Minnesota. Do you guys try to include other states if you're in the same kind of situation?
I don't know if anyone from Heartland is on the call, but we are actually working with some people from Nebraska who are interested in one day starting a CAI chapter, but they're not there yet. And so they have been inviting those Nebraska people to their virtual calls, even their CA Day, which is a large event, you know, and worth traveling for. So that's a great idea. And we do see, for instance, I know that the Heartland chapter is doing that. I'm not sure about any others.
And I think even around that topic too is you've got members who no matter what, they're not going to potentially come into your programming, right? And so I think that's how potentially your education committees can work with those other committees on making sure that education is being provided in multiple formats, right? It's not just sitting in a classroom and it's not just sitting in Zoom. So you know, talk to your presenters. Are they interested in writing an article around this topic that can be put into one of your chapter publications before or after that programming, and kind of utilizing those different resources to reach those people who maybe aren't going to come to your in-person events, but maybe they will if they can start to see the type of topics that are out there, the type of style of education that's being provided. I'll also say utilize your peers, especially if you are doing a virtual education. You know, partner with another chapter to do that. You know, maybe it's we'll bring a manager, you bring a business partner, or maybe there's a hot topic that's going on. You don't have to be in this by yourself. And I think in this new environment that we have the opportunity to provide some virtual education, there's a lot of opening of doors to really come together. And again, it doesn't have to just be your neighbor in the same state of Florida or California. It could be someone from Kentucky and Minnesota working together and really talking. And we do have a lot of members that, I mean, we've got our national corporate members that are a part of every single chapter. And I know that they're very willing to be involved on education. But you might have similar members within your chapters that you can partner with, whether it's certain attorneys. I will say if there's a law in your state to be just aware of any of those types of restrictions, that if you are partnering with a different area to know those legal aspects of things. But and a lot of those soft skills and things like that, you know, you don't have to do this on your own. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. So I just want to make sure that we give you guys the space that if anyone else wants to throw out a challenge or a success, that you have the space to share. I know many of you have had programs already this year. How do you think those programs have gone so far? Are you seeing an increase in attendance, a decline in attendance? What feel have you gotten so far?
Our
Hey,
spring
this is
managers
Lindsay.
symposium yesterday had like a very high attendance. I think one of the highest we've had, which was great. Transition was one of the topics, with an attorney speaker. So that was very well attended, and our state of the industry went okay this earlier this year, but it sounds like we're going to be looking for different locations in an attempt to attract people, maybe outside of the city. We're in Philadelphia sometimes, so location is one of our actual challenges, because I guess, you know, attracting people to come to the city seems like it's challenging sometimes. So we're trying to find larger venues and like outside of Philadelphia.
Are other people finding that location has been a struggle?
Yeah, Minnesota's going to outgrow our current space, and we have the biggest space outside of our like metro area right now. So in the next year or two, we're going to have to find an alternative space.
That's always a fun problem, right? It's great because you're getting that attendance and people wanting to be there, and then you've got to figure out a new location to make that work. We've got someone with a 904 area code that came off mute.
Hey, this is Lindsay. How are you guys?
Hi, Lindsay.
So a couple of things. As far as location, I'm in Northeast Florida, sorry. We changed this year to have all of our programs at one location. Previously, we were moving from location to location every month for our programs, and it was like a struggle just trying to make sure that we could reserve it in time. So we have all of ours now in one location. We've only had 2 January and February programs so far, but they've been pretty well attended. So we'll see how that goes. And then the other question I was really interested in these homeowner board member panels or Q&A sessions. For those of you that are doing those, are they mostly in person or virtual, and are they during the day or in the evening? Because we are trying to reach out to more of our volunteer leaders. And I know a lot of times when I'm talking to different people, it's harder for them to attend our events because they are in the middle of the day. So just wondering how that's going for you guys.
Great. Feel free to come off mute if you would like to share around your homeowner specific ones, of when you're having those, how you're doing those.
Ours are afternoon as well. I feel like most of the homeowners though that are attending are either retired or maybe work from home, because ours are usually held around 11:15 in the afternoon. So those who work full-time jobs usually are not in attendance.
And Carrie, are those in person or are they virtual?
We do ours in person, and we have for about, what are we at, almost 2 years now, we're back in person.
Okay.
I think it was Steve that said he was from Long Island. But I know Long Island does their trade show and CA Day with education on Saturday. And I have been blown away by the number of homeowner leaders that they have attending. I mean, it's crazy. So Steve, I think it was you. I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that, but I know that that's been going well for them from what I've seen. I think they also do after hours, like you're talking about, for regular education for homeowner leaders. And I mean, I'm sure they have more more homeowner leaders than managers attending that Saturday trade show and education day.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting balance that you've got to make, right? That depending on if it's the homeowner specific education that you're providing, who your homeowners are, and when's the time that they can come. Like Carrie mentioned, if you have a lot of full-time employed people who are sitting in these positions, are they going to take off work? Are they able to leave work to come to your events? If you're having them on a Friday afternoon, are they able to do that? Are you taking away time in the evening that's when they're spending time with their families? So again, kind of getting a feel for in your market, who are your homeowner leaders? And I know we talked a little bit about surveying, but I think that's a great way to get some feedback from them. And maybe it's not even a paper survey, but it's having conversations with them. I'm going to call out the Minnesota chapter a little bit because I know you have been making, not you personally, I don't believe, but other people within your chapter have been making personal phone calls to a lot of the homeowner leaders and having conversations with them of what type of education do you want? When's the best time? How can we be that resource for you? And the response might be, you know, I just want the newsletter. I don't want to be personally active at an event or an education, but the resources that you're providing me is what I need. And it might not be. It might be, well, if you had this on a Tuesday night at 5 p.m., that would be able to make me come here. So also thinking about some of those. I know that's a lot of work, and that might be something for, again, connecting with one of your other committees to maybe take on that initiative, but getting some of that feedback and that personal conversation sometimes gives a really good quality information.
Another thing that we've done at the Minnesota chapter is we've geared our homeowner leader programs to breakfast socials, so that we kind of changed up from the lunch and learns with the manager education programs, which are also open to the homeowner leaders. But that way the homeowner leaders can feel that we've accommodated a special time for them and them only. And then they get some breakfast and coffee, and it's just kind of a fun, different approach to it. And we've had really good success with our homeowner leader programs that are separate from the managers and pulling the managers out of those programs.
Great. And what time do you normally start that program, Heather or Caitlin?
Yeah, about 8:30. And we also try to do them on Fridays. We've noticed that Fridays have been really well. And that was based on feedback from those homeowner leaders. And we do 8:30 to 10. We try to do like an hour of program and then Q&A. We noticed that the shorter, get all the education in an hour and let them do their roundtable discussions is more their jam.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other items for the group? All right. Headquarters team, anything else you'd like to share with everyone before we close out today?
No, just a reminder that we will have the recording available. If there was anyone who wasn't able to make it today, you can share it with them as well. Thank you all for joining and for participating, for sharing. Again, this is your peer network. I hope you found it valuable. We're going to do that. We've already done this with the membership committee chairs, and we're also, if you have a young professionals committee, we are also doing a session with them tomorrow. We do have, again, those recordings that we will be putting in our chapter leader YouTube page. We will make sure that the chapter leaders all get those links and they can share that with you. Again, if there's anything that you want to review or share within your committees, please feel free to do so. If there's any resources that you need, please feel free to reach out to any of us here at the headquarters team. And also, if you would like to reach out to your other chapters or your peers again, please let us know and we can make sure that we're connecting you with this. We hope to have one of these again. We think this is really beneficial for you to be able to share and also provide feedback and guidance to, again, your peer group, and give you a little bit of recognition outside of just your local area to really see the impact that you're making within CAI on a whole international level. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everyone.